All right. What is up, folks? Welcome to episode 1 of Make Fitness Make Sense with me, your host, Coach JK McLeod. Make Fitness Make Sense is a weekly podcast where I take different topics related to fitness, nutrition, and fitness and nutrition related habits and try to break them down in a way that hopefully makes sense and removes a lot of the confusion and frustration that I believe is out there in the fitness space today. Let's go ahead and kick off episode number 1. It is going to be a Q&A episode. I've got 3 things that I'm going to cover today. We are going to talk about collagen, or specifically collagen protein, and whether or not that is something that's helpful or is it overhyped. Also going to answer a question regarding recovery after the age of 30. And then I'm going to address a post that I saw that was asking for some advice on how to stop particular feelings after you've been making some progress with fitness, those old feelings that used to come up that are now coming up again. So those are going to be the 3 things that I'm going to cover today. Before going any further in today's episode, I want to take a moment just to give you some context on where Make Fitness Make Sense comes from and where I intend for it to go. For those of you who are hearing me for the first time, first, welcome. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you pressing play on the Make Fitness Make Sense podcast. For those of you who are not hearing me for the first time, you likely have followed me since I had the Help Me Understand podcast, which is still a current podcast, by the way, a podcast that I started back in 2020. And as of the recording that will come out, and this recording will actually be on that podcast too, we will have hit 300 episodes. When I first started the Help Me Understand podcast back in 2020, the initial intention was to have solo episodes along with hosting conversations where I dug into the context and the nuance and just different perspectives on the things that I believe people experience in everyday life. And that ranged from health and fitness to parenting to self-development to politics to pop culture, music, sports, really a whole host of different things. What I found is that with being more intentional about the growth of my business in the fitness industry as a personal trainer and someone who writes training programs for groups, I found that slowly but surely, the majority of my episodes on Help Me Understand were skewing towards fitness, and Help Me Understand had become a fitness focused only, for the most part, podcast. While I do have a passion for continuing on the fitness train, obviously I do, hopefully that's obvious, or else I wouldn't be here on Make Fitness Make Sense. I found that the story I was telling myself is that I had gone so far down the lane of the fitness focus that it would be really odd and just really disjointed and not quite flow if I were to occasionally do an episode about something that wasn't related to fitness. If it was an episode that was related to politics or things that I thought about current events. So my solution is, let's start a new podcast, which is why I'm here, called Make Fitness Make Sense, and hopefully grow additional listeners. So not completely different listeners. Hopefully, if you're here from Help Me Understand, I want you to stick with me. And also, I believe that with having this Make Fitness Make Sense podcast, that hopefully will also open up the possibilities of gaining new listeners here. So with that being said, Help Me Understand will be continuing, and it will return to its roots. We're going back to the foundation of hosting conversations and solo episodes from myself, talking about all sorts of different things. So hopefully you'll enjoy both of them. However, if one is more your cup of tea or cup of coffee or Diet Coke than the other one, then that's cool. All right. So let's go ahead and get into 3 things that I want to cover today. One is a question that I received from a client about collagen protein and just my thoughts on that. Another one is giving some more perspective, some more context to my thoughts on a Threads post that I responded to that was asking about suggestions for recovering when you are 30 plus and work out multiple days per week. And then the last topic that I am going to cover is my response to a post on Threads. If you haven't picked up on it already, Threads is my favorite social media platform. A post that I responded to on Threads where someone was talking about, let's see, what was it? Just to put it in a bow here, just really having these flashbacks and these feelings of how they felt previously before they were consistent with their training and their nutrition, and feeling guilty about having those same feelings again, even though they've been at it for a while. So I wanted to talk about those three things. All right. So let's start with the first on the list, which is going to be talking about collagen protein. And the question that I had gotten from my client was asking me my thoughts. And what you will likely come to hopefully understand about me is that my go-to phrase is, well, when you say thoughts, like, help me understand where that's coming from, because I have a lot of thoughts on different things. What will help me be the most helpful and give you tips that you'll actually be able to take and do something with is if I have an understanding of where the question is coming from. So in this particular instance, the client was asking me what my thoughts were about collagen protein, because they are currently in a fat loss phase where they are more focused than ever on ensuring that they get in enough protein, because they want to make sure that they're doing what they can nutritionally to maintain the amount of muscle that they've worked very hard to put on. And also, they have just noticed that they're receiving a decent amount of advertising and content and just a lot of noise in the atmosphere around suggestions, specifically with putting a scoop of collagen protein in your coffee and some different things like that. For context, this is a woman who had sent me this particular question. First, what I will do is, if you'd like to get more detail specifically on this topic with collagen protein, go to Help Me Understand episode 235, because I went back after answering her question on a call. I actually went back and sent that to her. So I went a bit more in depth. So overall, if you're not familiar with collagen protein, my perspective on this and a mix of some of the science behind it is that it's what we call an incomplete protein. So when we're talking about something being an incomplete protein, what we're referring to is the fact that the amino acid profile, so let's call it some of the different parts that you would normally want to have present in protein, if your primary driver for consuming it is aiding in the building and maintaining of muscle. If those particular pieces are all there, then we would consider that what we call a complete protein. Because collagen doesn't contain all or a full amino acid profile, to put it very simply, and that's going to be where I'm really going with the Make Fitness Make Sense podcast. To put it very simply, it is missing some of those parts that you would want in a complete protein. It doesn't mean that it has no effectiveness. It's just that one of the primary amino acids that it's missing is leucine, and leucine is one of the more foundational pieces that you want included, or foundational parts that you want included in a protein when you are primarily looking at taking protein or eating protein or drinking protein, whatever it is. When you're looking at a protein supplement, let's say, it's one of the primary pieces that you want there if you are truly trying to get the effect of building and or maintaining muscle. So because it doesn't contain that, along with a couple of other amino acids or a couple of other parts, it's an incomplete protein. Also, the source for collagen protein is going to be the bones, the skin, and the cartilage from the animal that it's getting that protein from. So it's different than if you were consuming a whey protein or even like a whole food sourced protein, because that's not primarily coming from bones, skin, and cartilage. It's coming from the meat of the actual animal, so to speak. So, with it being an incomplete protein, it doesn't have the same effect. So, where collagen protein, both anecdotally and with some research, has shown to be effective is in the same areas where it's sourced from. It potentially can be effective with helping the growth, repair, and maintenance of your skin health and your cartilage, joints, things like that. So that's really where I would point somebody towards if they were trying to figure out, is collagen protein worth including in my supplement routine? Now, in this particular case, I didn't recommend that my client put a whole lot of focus towards it because there's someone who is already consuming a very solid amount of overall protein, really from mostly whole food sources most of the time. For a frame of reference, I do prescribe to the range of somewhere between zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.8 grams per pound of body weight being a sufficient range for most people who resistance train consistently to be within. So hopefully that kind of clears that up a little bit. So again, if you'd like to get more deeper, or if you'd like to go deeper into my perspective on collagen protein, help me understand. Episode number 235 is where I would point you to that. I want to say I did like 20 whole minutes just on that topic alone. All right. Number 2 on the list. All right. In this post, guy says, man, with multiple N's, my recovery is slowing down. If you're 30 plus and work out multiple days through the week, what do you do to recover? Help a brother out. Okay. First of all, love the question. Recognizing like, yo, things are really starting to slow down. I do my best to try and talk about these things, understanding that for someone like myself who loves context, there's a whole lot of context that's missing here. Now, general recommendations would be ensuring that you are from a nutrition, I lost my train of thought. Ensuring that from a nutrition standpoint, you are getting in an adequate amount of the macro and micronutrients that you need. So that's something that I'm not going to say that I would start there. And I'll actually tell you in a minute where I would start. But first, starting from the recovery standpoint, to answer this particular person's question, we would take a look at their nutrition. Where are they in terms of getting in enough calories first? Because if we are in a situation, hypothetically, where we're training and then also not paying attention, or we are not paying attention to how many calories we're intaking, or we're specifically in a deficit, depending on where you are. And those who have been through a really dedicated fat loss phase, like an intentional fat loss phase, are very likely very familiar with that feeling of getting to a point where you just feel like you're not bouncing back or recovering in a very effective way. Soreness tends to last a little bit longer. It takes a bit longer for you to really kind of get into the flow of your workout, things like that. So I would be taking a look at, from a nutrition standpoint, are we getting in enough? Also, then kind of underneath that layer, I would be looking at carbohydrate timing. So this is where nutrient timing can potentially come into play. So those are a couple things I'd look at nutritionally. I also, depending on the style of training, and I'll talk about this in a minute because that's where I'd really focus most of my time, I would take a look at, are we training in a way where we need to actually take a look at the amount of electrolytes that we're including? And keep in mind that when we're talking electrolytes are not only something that comes from supplements like Gatorade or Liquid IV or things like that. Electrolytes are also things that are included in everyday foods like potassium, so like bananas and things like that. So if this particular individual was training in a way that is potentially draining them, then we would also take a look at that, which I would put underneath the overall heading of hydration too. So we would take a look at nutrition, also get an understanding for what is sleep looking like too. So if we're saying that we're trying to figure out better ways to better recover, so what are you guys doing for recovery? Before going into things like recovery boots and ice baths and saunas and things like that, my MO is that I'm typically going to start with the foundational stuff. I have 3 foundational fitness habits: eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. So you will find over time that a lot of what I talk about is really most summarized underneath those 3 pillars: eat well, sleep enough, and exercise regularly. So we get an understanding of what his sleep looked like. Are there certain things that we can do to improve your sleep too? And then really, here's where I would first start if I'm having a one-on-one conversation with somebody who brings that question to me specifically, whether you're 30 plus or not. Uh, and your question is about working out multiple days through the week, and you're trying to figure out like what's a way to help my recovery, because I'm just noticing that my recovery process is really slowing down. I would actually be starting with getting an understanding of their training, because you can give as many answers as you want about different methods to be able to recover. So we can talk about ice baths, we can talk about recovery boots, we can talk about different supplements and all that stuff from a recovery standpoint. If we haven't taken the time to understand what the training looks like, then we're really, really throwing a whole bunch of stuff at the wall. So an example that I gave in this thread was that I lift fairly heavy, I would say, 4 days per week. And then the other 3 days is some combination somewhere in there. I am doing a couple of about 30-ish minutes of low to moderate intensity steady state cardio, also known as like a zone 2-ish type of cardio. And then there's one session that's probably somewhere in the 10 to 20 minute range where it's higher intensity, either like a Metcon or sprints or some form of higher intensity cardio. So because I'm in a position, and even my clients are in a position, to be more specific about what we're doing training wise, then we're in a much better position to be able to talk about what would be helpful from a recovery standpoint. So to close this out, think about it like this. If someone were to come to you outside of the fitness space, if somebody were to come to you and say, "Hey, I am really struggling relationship wise. What are you guys who are married doing in order to repair things after there's been a fight?" And we just start jumping in with, "Oh man, you got to buy her flowers. Here's what you got to do. You got to book a massage at her favorite massage place. No, no, no. This is what you've got to do. You've got to get her a gift certificate to her favorite nail place." There are all these different things that we may suggest that you need to do. All the while, is that really going to be helpful if you don't understand what your friend did in the first place, if you don't know what the fight is about? Because that's really where the primary issue is. So that probably sounds a little bit, that will likely sound weird to some folks. And also that would mean that you're probably listening to me for the first time. So just strap in, because that's basically where my brain goes. All right. Let's get to the last one. I really, really liked this one. Okay. In the post, this person said, "Hey, my gym and fitness people, I need you guys to talk me out of this guilt. This week really wasn't the best for my gym and nutrition goals. I usually work out about 4 days a week and eat within, usually below, my deficit. However, this week, your girl only went to the gym twice and had a pretty gnarly eating day on Thursday. I'm really in my head about this and having war flashbacks of me when I was 80 plus pounds heavier. I know it's just me being insane, but the old me haunts my soul so much." All right. So one, man, is this relatable? I can recall this back when I was first trying to first made the commitment to start training consistently and things like that, periodically. Or actually, let me rewind. When I first started really taking my nutrition seriously, because I started with training, because full disclosure, I wasn't ready to touch my nutrition in any way, shape, or form. So I started with training, and then I moved on to my nutrition. And my first foray into truly, like, actually paying attention to what I was eating and how much I consuming started getting into macro counting. Prior to that, I had made smaller changes, and I really relied, throwback, I really relied on this book called Eat This, Not That, which was, if anybody remembers that, it's so old that I remember I got it at Borders bookstore. That was a book that would take different things from restaurants and try to give you the quote unquote healthier choice. So it would be like, instead of a Big Mac, get this chicken and whatever sandwich from McDonald's and all this stuff. That's actually where I started. Then I found macro counting, and that was really helpful in educating in educating me on understanding, like, actual calories and micronutrients and all of that other stuff. So that's what really led me down the road of really becoming a professional in the nutrition space. So I say that to say, there for sure would be times where I would decide, hey, I've graduated from the point of, I mean, I used to eat, like, house a Papa John's large pizza probably every day, like in one sitting. I'm not talking about like throughout the day. That was basically dinner. I remember one time that I had hit the point that I was doing it so regularly, like that was just my normal portion size. It would either be, I can't remember now. I don't want to overblow this, if it was medium or a large, but it was typically like all the meats or whatever they called, like their meat lovers sort of style thing. But I was ordering one every day pretty much for months on end. And I remember at some point, for some reason, I had gone a few days without ordering one. And I ended up calling Papa John's. This is pre like ordering from an app. I called Papa John's, and the person that answered the phone said something like, "Mr. McLeod, we were wondering if you were okay because it's been a while since you ordered." I was like, oh man, like that definitely tells me like something is going down here. So fast forward along the way, and I start my fitness journey to really taking things seriously with fitness and nutrition. Realize I'm rambling on, but I'll get back to the question. And I had finally gotten past the point of ordering a large every day and maybe move to a medium. And then instead of a medium, instead of getting pizza every day, it was maybe once to twice a week. And then to a point where it was about once a week at that point. Now I might have pizza a couple times a week. It's just, I'm very, very much in harmony with things now. And portion control is a much better place for me these days than it was back then. I remember, though, going through different periods of time where I would go ahead and still like smash a large, all the meats. I think it was the pizza that they called it. So it was like pepperoni, sausage, bacon, ham, like every meat that they possibly had available. And thinking to myself, well, shoot, like I I don't know if I've really like got this thing figured out then. Like if these feelings are still coming up where I feel like that's something that I need to do, even though I had gotten better at moderation and portion control, even like getting past the point of ordering a pizza every day and then 3 days a week and then 2 days a week and then once a month or whatever it might be, even having the feelings of, I wonder if I should go snag a large pizza right now. I would have those times where I'd think to myself, man, I guess still haven't like totally kicked it, simply because I had the feeling of that. Or even outside of, you know, specifically going after food or anything, it would be maybe a feeling of how maybe I felt or looked or performed or anything like that, like going back to feeling a certain way. At my I would say at my largest, I was, for reference, I'm 6'2", or I'm 6'1 3/4", but we're going to call that 6'2". I believe that I topped out probably in the 250s, maybe 250 to 255, somewhere in that range. I know for sure I'd hit 250 at some point. And from my perspective, I thought that I carried it pretty well. And I would also still be wearing like two shirts. My guys that are a little bit on the heftier side, like, you know what I'm talking about. I would wear like the t-shirt under the t-shirt because I felt like it would kind of like squeeze things in or whatnot. And I believe that I carried it well. Respectfully, like this was back in my single days. So the response that I was getting from people that I was interested in seemed like I carried it pretty well. Like that wasn't really too much of a struggle back in the day. So I was thinking to myself, sometimes when I really did, again, get further in my fitness journey, I would still have those feelings periodically from time to time. If I would try something on and be like, man, I wonder if I should put a shirt on underneath this t-shirt so that I can, kind of squeeze things in or whatnot. And thinking to myself, man, I thought I'd be over this. Like I thought this wouldn't be a thing. So to go back to this particular person's post, it's very relatable for those reasons that I just brought up. And here's what I would say to them and what I would say to you is that feelings are not your failure. Like feelings are not a sign of failure. I look at it, I really try to process it in three ways in no particular order. So instead of looking at having previous feelings of having felt like a certain way about my body, or felt a certain way about my performance, or felt a certain way about my nutrition habits and cravings and things like that, I would look at it this way, and hopefully this will help you. One, how long am I sitting with those particular feelings? These are in no particular order. So how long am I sitting with those particular feelings? So going back to the example of when I had the thoughts of, man, I don't know if this shirt doesn't really fit me very well, and I've already bought the shirt, so maybe I should do some things to make it quote unquote look better. How long is that feeling staying with me that, oh man, this is some of the same feelings that I used to have before. So I'm asking myself, how long has that feeling stayed with me? More often than not, what I would find is that I didn't wallow in those feelings anywhere near as long as I used to. So that was a helpful point of progress. Number two is asking myself, how strong is this feeling? And that's very similar to the first one with how long, but also how strong. Like, is this like ruling my life? Like, is this a feeling, a thought that I'm having that is overriding everything else that's going on in this particular moment? So if I'm with one of my kids at that time and we're about to take a picture and I have this feeling of inadequacy and that I haven't made that much progress. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let me try and angle myself a certain way and maybe turn to this side. Cause then, maybe they'll see that my arm's kind of jacked and that'll kind of take over for, what my belly might look like. Like how strong is that feeling? Is that feeling overriding just taking the freaking picture right now? So number one, how long is the feeling? Number two, how intense is that feeling? And again, what you will find more often than not, if you do prescribe to my belief that having the feeling alone isn't the failure, the win and the sign that you're going to be okay is that you were able to insert a different feeling that overrode it. It's kind of like if that feeling popped up to the front of the line, you were able to have 4 or 5 other positive feelings, like neutral to positive feelings that jumped in front of that person and they got moved back. So it's almost like if you go to, what is it, like Disney World or wherever it is where you have like the fast pass, how they have that at amusement parks. Yeah, that negative feeling may have cut to the front of the line, but you've got 4 other neutral to positive feelings that have the fast pass. So bump those to the front of the line because that one, it doesn't get that priority. And the last one, and this was probably one of the more helpful things to help me recalibrate if I had those feelings of guilt or negativity, those flashbacks to that previous version of myself that was unhealthy, not taking care of myself, not really making fitness a priority. I would ask myself, how long has it been since this feeling has occurred? What's been the gap in that? So very similar to this is going to be, these analogies, they're just kind of odd. And I'm just prescribed to being weird sometimes. You know how you go on a work site and it says X number of days since the last accident? Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. That's the same kind of thought process that I try to rationally think through when there would be some sort of negative thought that I would have around my physique, how I felt, how I performed, actions that I was taking is, yeah, I've had this particular feeling, like I'm having a flashback. And you know what? Haven't really had this feeling. These negative thoughts haven't really popped up in probably a couple of months. Whereas previously, it was almost like a running podcast in the back of my head that was like never ending with figuring out how to walk a certain way, how to turn a certain way, whenever going into, taking pictures, how to make sure that I was like kind of bracing my stomach the entire time, all those different things. Like I've definitely gone through that period where I would tell myself, yeah, I'm carrying this weight pretty well. I'm carrying this body composition because weight versus body composition is a bit of a different conversation because there's definitely a difference. I would tell myself I'm carrying this body composition pretty well when in fact I wasn't really being upfront with myself about things that I was doing in order to quote unquote carry it well. Wearing two shirts, sucking my belly in, trying to just angle things a certain way. I remember even reaching out to one of my friends who had posted a photo on Facebook, and I asked her if she could either delete it or crop it because it was me sitting and looking at my phone. When we were out at a bar, and they took the picture, and I just remember being unhappy with how you could see my belly with my button down. The buttons were like screaming for help at the bottom, and I asked her to fix it, and she fixed it. And also, that was in a time in my life where I thought to myself, yeah, I'm carrying this weight really well, when in fact I wasn't being realistic or being real with myself about the things I was doing to try to present myself a certain way. So again, just to recap, 3 things that I would suggest if you are similar to the person that posted this, where you perhaps have maybe exhibited some behaviors that remind you of a past version of yourself, especially when you've been working really hard to build consistency with your fitness and nutrition habits overall. 3 things I want you to ask yourself. How long is this feeling staying with me? How strong is this feeling? And then last but certainly not least, how long has it been since I had this feeling before? And I believe that if you have a positive answer to at least one of those, then I want you to hold on to that and carry that one forward. All right. That wraps it up for today's episode. If you have feedback, comments, questions, suggestions for future episodes of Make Fitness Make Sense, reach out to me. I am on Instagram at Coach JK McLeod. That is MCLEOD. You can also email me, jk@jkmcleod.com. I most likely am not going to be setting up a separate Instagram page and Facebook page and all that stuff for the podcast itself. Again, if you are a longtime listener or even recent listener of Help Me Understand, and you've come over here, then thank you. I truly, truly appreciate you. If you are a new listener who is unfamiliar with me, I truly, truly appreciate you too for giving me a chance. Hopefully you feel like something in this episode was impactful enough for you to both subscribe to the podcast so that you can get updated whenever we do have the next episode come out. It will be weekly. As of right now, I'll commit to Tuesdays. You'll get a new episode every Tuesday. And also that you feel so led to post about this on social media, tag me at Coach JK McLeod, pass on the episode to a friend, family member, a coworker that you really don't like, but you want people to be healthy, pass this on to them. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. Episode 1 in the books. Take care. We'll talk to you next time.